On June 12, 2025, the case of John Hanson, a name synonymous with the enduring debate surrounding capital punishment in the United States, came to a close. This case is not just a story of crime and punishment, but a clear testament to the complexities of the justice system, where high-level political decisions can determine a person's fate. From a death sentence spanning over 2 decades interrupted by policy changes from 2 U.S. presidential administrations to dramatic last-minute legal battles and appeals for clemency based on mental health, we will unravel the full tragic story behind the deaths of Mary Agnes Bowles and Gerald Thurman. What turned a man reportedly with autism into a killer, and did his death truly bring justice to the victims and their families? Today, let's explore Hanson's last meal, his final words, and delve into the story behind this case. This horrifying case claimed the lives of 2 innocent people who, despite their different backgrounds and lives, were tragically bound by John Hanson's criminal hand. First, there was Mary Agnes Bowles, a 77-year-old woman whose life was filled with love and dedication. She was not only a retired banker, but also a passionate volunteer at her local hospital, where she dedicated over 11,000 hours to caring for critically ill newborns. The Oklahoma newspaper praised her golden heart in 1999. Although unmarried and childless, Mary Bowles treated over a dozen nieces and nephews as her own children, and friends often called her the best aunt in the world. She also had a deep passion for music and travel, having played for the Tulsa Philharmonic and enjoying adventures everywhere, from hot air ballooning over Lake Tahoe to cross-country skiing. On August 3, 1999, a fateful day, as she walked in Tulsa's Promenade Mall and returned to her car, her peaceful life was brutally cut short. She was carjacked and abducted, initiating a horrific chain of events. The second victim, Gerald Thurman, a pit owner, unintentionally became the sole and unwilling witness to the carjacking. He was shot 4 times, one of which was a fatal shot to the head. Although his nephew managed to call him just before the attack and later found him still alive, Gerald Thurman could not survive succumbing to his severe injuries 2 weeks later. Both Mary Bowles and Gerald Thurman were inexcusably deprived of their lives, becoming victims of a crime whose motives remain largely unclear. The perpetrator of these heinous crimes was John Hanson, 61, who was executed on the morning of Thursday, June 12th. John Hanson was not an unfamiliar name in criminal records, but behind the facade of a killer, his lawyers painted a more complex picture of a damaged individual. Details of Hanson's childhood and past are not widely disclosed, but his lawyer, Callie Heller, vehemently condemned the execution, calling it a senseless act of cruelty. According to Heller, Hanson suffered from autism, a condition that made him susceptible to manipulation and exploitation by his dominant co-defendant. This argument became central to the legal battle to save Hanson's life. At a recent clemency hearing, John Hanson attempted to explain his actions, blaming Victor Miller, his co-defendant, for instigating all violent behavior. "I'm not a bad person," Hanson said, his voice filled with belated regret. "I got caught in a situation I couldn't control. Things happened so fast, and in a moment of impulse, out of indecision and fear, I reacted incorrectly, and 2 people lost their lives." He added, "I can't change the past. I would if I could." Were these words genuine remorse or merely a last-ditch effort to gain clemency? Did his past and psychological condition fully shape John Hanson's criminal path, pushing him into an inescapable spiral? The horrific chain of events leading to the deaths of Mary Agnes Bowles and Gerald Thurman began on August 3, 1999, at the Promenade Mall in Tulsa. It was a fateful afternoon when Mary Bowles, after her usual walk, returned to her car. There she was threatened at gunpoint by John Hanson and Victor Miller, who then carjacked and abducted her. Their goal was to use the retired banker's car to commit other robberies. According to court records, the 2 perpetrators drove Bowles to a secluded area near a pit. Here, fate led them to Gerald Thurman, the pit owner. Thurman unintentionally witnessed the car circling the pit before it approached him. Miller got out and fired 4 shots at Thurman, one of which was to the head, while Mary Bowles sat helplessly in the back of the car, witnessing the horrific scene. Thurman died 2 weeks later from his severe injuries. After the first murder, Miller continued to drive a short distance. During this time, Mary Bowles, in extreme fear, asked the men, "Do you have children or someone who loves you?" This humane question was met with brutality when Hansen punched her. Immediately after Miller stopped the car, and Hansen forced Bowles out and shot her at least 6 times. Bowles' body was later found in a severely decomposed state more than a week later on September 7, 1999. But the crimes did not stop there. After 2 brutal murders, Hansen and Miller continued their armed crime spree, robbing a video store and a bank at gunpoint within a 5-day period. What drove John Hansen to continue this violent and relentless path after brutally taking 2 lives? Had he completely lost awareness of his actions, or was it simply bottomless cruelty? After days of terror, John Hansen and Victor Miller's crime spree finally came to an end. Their downfall stemmed from within their own ranks. After a heated argument, Victor Miller's wife decided to turn in both her husband and John Hansen to the police. Just 2 days after Mary Bowles' body was found, both were arrested, ending their violent, armed crime spree. During the trial, John Hansen was convicted of murder and sentenced to death, while Victor Miller, who was believed to have shot Thurman and boasted about shooting Bowles, received only a life sentence. This disparity in sentencing, along with the argument about Hansen's autism and susceptibility to manipulation, led his defense lawyers to vehemently protest, calling it a disturbing miscarriage of justice. They argued that this imbalance reflected flaws in assessing the role and responsibility of each individual in a co-conspiratorial crime. Was Miller's boast about shooting Bowles true, or was it a move to protect Hansen or confuse the court? And did John Hansen think he could forever escape the law after what he had done? John Hansen was convicted of killing Mary Agnes Bowles and Gerald Thurman, but the journey to his execution was a protracted and volatile legal battle, spanning over 2 decades, reflecting shifts in U.S. government policy and political views. Initially, Hansen's execution was set for December 15, 2022. However, President Joe Biden's administration unexpectedly blocked his transfer from federal prison in Louisiana to Oklahoma. This move was consistent with the former president's opposition to capital punishment, a policy maintained for years that led him to commute the death sentences of most federal death row inmates just before leaving office. However, Hansen's fate changed again under the Trump administration. In February of this year, the Trump administration approved Hansen's transfer back to Oklahoma for the sole purpose of carrying out his death sentence. This decision came just 3 days after President Trump signed an executive order reinstating the federal death penalty, asserting it as an essential tool to deter and punish the most heinous offenders. Oklahoma Attorney General Gentner Drummond immediately requested the U.S. Department of Justice to transfer Hansen, and he arrived in Oklahoma in March, paving the way for his execution. On Monday, June 9th, just days before his execution, Hansen surprisingly obtained a stay of execution from an Oklahoma judge. This stay stemmed from Hansen's argument that one of the 3 members of the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board, Sean Malloy, was biased in voting against his clemency. But did this 26-year-long death sentence, with its legal complexities and political interventions, truly bring complete justice and peace to those left behind? Can a decades-long process still be considered justice? On the morning of Thursday, June 12th, after over 2 decades of waiting and a series of intense legal battles, John Hansen finally faced his fate. He was executed by lethal injection in Oklahoma. Hansen's last meal on Wednesday was nothing special by his own request. He received the standard meal for other inmates, a chicken patty, 2 loaves of bread, 2 cups of fruit, and carrots. A simple meal for a life about to end. As Hansen lay on the gurney preparing for the fatal injection, he uttered his final words. According to witnesses, those words sounded like, "Forgive me," or "Forgive," and ended with a meaningful phrase, "Peace to all." A spiritual advisor, Reverend Michael Scott, stood at his feet, silently reading the Bible as the execution drug began to flow into his arm. Witnesses described Hansen beginning to snore as the executive director of the Department of Corrections announced that he was unconscious. That snore was the last breath of a life filled with crime and tragedy. In addition to media witnesses, including Nolan Clay from the Oklahoman part of the USA, Today Network, several relatives of both Mary Bowles and Gerald Thurman were present to witness the final moments of the man who caused them such profound pain. Jacob Thurman, Gerald Thurman's son from Tulsa, expressed relief. "I feel like we can finally come to terms with this. I feel like we can finally close this chapter and our family can pick up the pieces and move forward." He specifically thanked U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi for ordering Hansen's transfer from federal custody so that Oklahoma could carry out this just sentence. She also criticized the protracted, costly, and agonizing legal battles for survivors. Hansen claimed that Malloy had served as a prosecutor in Tulsa County when he was resentenced in 2006 and therefore was disqualified from considering his clemency application. Although Malloy asserted he had never worked on Hansen's case, Oklahoma County Judge Richard Ogden ordered a stay of execution pending Hansen's lawsuit. However, this legal battle was swiftly reversed. On Wednesday, June 11th, just one day before the execution, the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals overturned Judge Ogden's ruling allowing the execution to proceed. Hansen's lawyer, Emma Rolls, sharply criticized the decision. No person facing execution should have to beg for mercy before a decision-maker who was directly involved in their prosecution. Bowles' niece, Sarah Parker Mooney, also expressed frustration about the last-minute legal disputes, calling them frivolous lawsuits funded by taxpayers, ridiculous, expensive, and only re-victimize survivors. Shut to Maus. Did John Hansen's death truly bring complete solace and closure to all those left behind, or was it merely an end leaving unanswered questions? The John Hansen case concluded with an execution, but it opened doors to a host of profound and controversial questions about the justice system, societal ethics, and the true meaning of justice. Oklahoma's Republican Attorney General Gentner Drummond declared that justice has finally been served, asserting, "This case proves that no matter how long it takes, Oklahoma will hold murderers accountable for their crimes." However, reactions from the victims' own families revealed a complex and contradictory picture. Sarah Parker Mooney, Mary Bowles' niece, witnessed the execution and called for systemic reform. The death penalty is not an effective form of justice when it takes 26 years. Respectfully, if the state is going to continue executing individuals, there needs to be a better process. This current process is broken.